Assalamualaikum everyone and welcome to the first ever episode of Round the Table at KRN. This is a new series that we're starting. It's podcast format, a vlog, there's so many words for it now. But what we're really trying to do is talk about pertinent issues with experts and bring them to you. Today is the first podcast that we're doing, and in this podcast, we thought a very good topic to explore would be to understand what really Karandaaz does. And what is Karandaaz? I'm Zainab Saeed, and when I came to Karandaaz, I found out that there was an entire spectrum of work that was happening, and we really needed to bring it to you so that you all could understand what is it that Karandaaz does. So today, I have an esteemed panel with me of our senior most personnel who will talk about what Karandaaz does, what are the aspirations of Karandaaz, and how Karandaaz tackles the different challenges that it faces in its scope of work. So without further ado, I'm going to ask all of my panelists to introduce themselves. Maybe we can start with you, Vikas.
I'm Waqasul Hassan. I'm CEO Karandaaz. I've been with Karandaaz for nearly 3 years.
I'm Shumaila Rafaqaz. I head innovation investments. I've been with the organization for about 4 years.
Hi, I'm Naveen Goraya. I look after the investments function in Karandaaz.
Hi, I'm Sharjeel Murtaza. I am the Director for Digital Financial Services at Karandaaz.
So without further ado, let's get to the meat of it. What is Karandaaz? Vikas, please tell us.
So, Zainab, people would tell you Karandaaz is special purpose vehicle, we are impact investment platform, blah, blah, blah. But if you ask me, I would call Karandaaz is basically a capability. Capability to identify a development challenge, structure a solution, and then the ability to deliver that solution successfully. That's what Karandaaz is. The word Karandaaz means entrepreneur in Urdu. एक काम करने का नया तरीका, new way of doing things. That's what Karandaaz is.
Great. So that's the overview. I know that there are functions and verticals within Karandaaz. So maybe we can start with you, Shujil. Can you tell us about the specific vertical that you're the director of, and what does it do for Karandaaz?
Sure. So, Digital Financial Services is the vertical that I'm leading at Karandaaz. Essentially, Digital Financial Services is playing the role of an ecosystem enabler. We are doing a lot of digital transformation work within the public sector, and we are also funding innovation and playing a role of a catalyst within the private sector. The idea being, or the sole mission being, to increase financial inclusion in Pakistan through digital means.
Nice. Shumaila, what does your vertical do at Karandaaz?
So innovation investment supports market-driven solutions to SME access to credit and financial inclusion. We've run several challenge rounds, about 7 so far, on various issues: international remittances, SME access to credit, scorecards, small distributor financing. But our major programs right now are Women Ventures, which provides access to credit for women-led businesses and technical assistance to make sure that it's absorbed properly. And then we also support climate change solutions developed by green tech entities, and we provide them access to credit and technical assistance as well.
Interesting. So what you're essentially saying is that within the SME broader framework, there are priority sectors that your vertical looks at and does investments in.
So these are sort of aligned with Karandaaz's strategic priority areas, gender and climate change, and these have become our key programs as well under innovation investment.
Great. We'll come to you, Naveed. What does Karandaaz Capital do?
So it is an investment platform which we call a development finance provider. It has a range of activities. We use all forms of capital instruments as well as grants to help financial institutions reach a stage of financial inclusion of micro, small and medium enterprises. So our objective is to improve the financial inclusion of micro, small and medium enterprises with a focus on employment growth of women and youth. In order to do that, we have several activities. Our major activity is to provide financing or fund new financial institutions that are missing in the infrastructure of Pakistan's financial landscape. We're also involved in setting up the first Pakistan's ever private equity fund that has invested in several growth capital investments across various focus sectors of the country. We've been involved in setting up innovative lending institutions, lending transactions for companies that banks have found risky, but we'd like to fund them to create a demonstration effect. And finally, our green investments function uses both equity and credit as product verticals to then fund both the climate mitigation, adaptation, investment opportunities, and make a difference. Given that Pakistan is one of the most affected countries from climate change perspective.
Great. So what I'm really hearing around the table is that, Pakistan has constrained access for SMEs and for unbanked individuals, and everything that we've been talking about around the table is there to fill a gap that is felt by SMEs, whether they're SMEs in the climate sector, SMEs led by women, whether it's SMEs looking for equity, because we know equity instruments are not that popular in Pakistan, or whether we're looking at how SMEs interact within each other through digital infrastructure. So the idea is that we're all kind of, all interventions are all focusing or honing into how we can address the gaps that SMEs face and how we can address the gaps that unbanked individuals face in Pakistan. So that's the mandate. I'd just like to add over here that there is a fourth vertical, which is called research, marketing, and communication. So the idea that every vertical sort of works on comes with evidence. So there is a lot of evidence that Karandaaz also produces in terms of looking at problems, doing landscape studies, also looking at problems very specific to certain investments, to certain sectors, and then using the evidence from those researchers to do policy level interventions, whether they're in women ventures, whether they're in Karandaaz Capital, or whether they're in DFS. I think the biggest financial inclusion survey that's done in Pakistan is also done by Karandaaz. It is called KFIS, and that's the standard that we have in terms of just mapping the landscape of financial inclusion also. So great. I hope that you all now understand what Karandaaz does. So it's a lot of things, it's a lot to take in, but the idea is that we are approaching a problem from multiple avenues. We're approaching a problem with multiple interventions because the gap is so large that multiple interventions, all hands on deck approach needs to be.
If you allow me, Zainab, I would say it's a comprehensive offer that Karandaaz has.
It's an all hands on deck comprehensive offer that Karandaaz is doing. So yeah. So now that we're clear on that, we know what Karandaaz is. I think I would, because around me here, I have over 20, 30 years of of cumulative experience of working with Karandaaz. So I would like each of the participants around me to share one of their projects or one of the achievements of Karandaaz that they are most proud of, that means the most to them. And I think maybe we can start with you, Naveed.
I think one of the most significant achievements we have had in the last about 10 years of Karandaaz's existence has been in the setting up of several financial institutions that are first of kind and did not exist in the country before. Primarily among them, one of our flagship and oldest financial institution that we have invested in is a partnership with KFW and Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund, targeting microfinance, wholesale financing. That did not exist in the country before, and currently it's the largest provider of financing to microfinance institutions. And the impact of that has been tremendous. Almost 1 million jobs have been supported by this particular institution over so many years.
And you're talking about the Pakistan Microfinance
Microfinance Investment Company. But that doesn't stop there. We've also set up first of kind SME financing institution called Parvaz Financial Services. It is using Karandaaz's past experience of innovative financial instruments. It is currently partnering with a lot of other industry players as well to introduce unique SME financing instruments in focus areas where capital is really required. And the third institution, which is relatively new, is Pakistan Infrazamin, which provides infrastructure guarantee in PKR terms in long-term credit, which does not exist in the country. And finally, our latest institution, which is going to be a game changer, we think, is National Credit Guarantee Company. It's in partnership with Ministry of Finance. And we feel that as it is launched and it becomes operational, it'll be partnering with financial institutions as well as creating those credit guarantee instruments, which are based on models of international credit guarantee companies of similar nature, but also eventually be responsible funding quite a sizable percentage of the existing SME finance universe. And just to put it in perspective, Right now, there are about 4.3 million estimated, because we don't have the latest census data, SMEs in the country. And only 165,000 are funded by banks.
That's a big financing gap.
This is as per State Bank data of September 2023. That's a huge gap. How do you cover that? Through a combination of all these activities and setting up of such institutions that have a tremendous magnitude in making a difference towards this landscape.
That's for all of you who didn't know, these companies are actually partly owned by Karandaaz, because Karandaaz not only came up with the idea, but Karandaaz actually put in capital in them, and they were actually able to garner other investors and other sort of funds to invest in them. Thank you, Naveed, for sharing that. I think one of the sort of landmarks that, Karandaaz has been able to achieve is also, not just been the creation of these companies, but creating these companies, sustaining them over the long term, but also being able to go into partnerships with other entities that are investing in these companies and using these companies to address the ecosystem level challenges that are faced by microfinance institutions in the case of PMIC, by SMEs in the case of both Karandaaz Financial Services and the NCGCL, and of course, infrastructure guarantees in the case of InfraZamin. So thank you so much for sharing that, Naveed. I'll come to you, since you're sitting right next to me, Shajid. What, in your opinion, is the project or the achievement of Karandaaz that makes the most, that gives you the biggest sense of achievement?
Look, because you have restricted me to one, so I would definitely like to highlight the implementation and deployment of the instant payment system that we know as RAST. I think that has been the biggest groundbreaking, game-changing intervention that Karandaaz has funded. I would definitely like to mention here that this was all funded on the basis of a grant, which came from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And we have basically laid the foundation for becoming a digital nation eventually. This is one of the essential layers of a Pakistan digital stack. हम सब ने बहुत दफा सुना होगा India stack का, हमने सुना होगा Singapore stack का. These technology stacks are made up of layers. So the payments layer is one of the most complex and the most essential. So, I think we have done great in this space, that we have enabled that payment system now. Just to put things into perspective, so far the impact has been great as well. It's still on its trajectory, but the adoption on RAST has been significant. It got launched in 2021. The second use case, which was the person-to-person payments, got launched in 2022. And most recently, a couple of months ago, we have actually launched the person-to-merchant use case on this. Since the first go-live till date, we have approximately 35 million users on Rust. So that's a significant number. Yes, it is. And if you talk about volumes on a daily basis, we are recording over 1.5 million transactions, obviously all digital, and they are amounting, or they're moving to the tune of PKR 50 billion daily. So that again is a very, very good outcome. It is also contributing 30 to 35% of the overall digital payments that are taking place in Pakistan. So 30-35% payments are going through Rust. So it has to be the biggest achievement so far.
Just playing devil's advocate here,
Sure.
sorry, since you're talking about this, how is this different from an IBFT? I mean, you're talking about transactions, you're talking about digital transactions. How is this more meaningful than me just using my app to transfer money from my account to yours?
Very good question, and we get this question asked many times. So look, IBFT was the first groundbreaking, I should say, intervention probably 2 decades ago now. IBFT came with some limitations in comparison, I'm saying now. So IBFT के ऊपर जो आप transfer करते हैं from a bank to any other bank, essentially it's a direct link between the banks. There is an agreement based on which these transactions are being settled, and most of the time they're not instant. They will still take some time, and the settlements, which are the core banking system settlements, they even take a couple of days. So the availability of the funds is not instant over IBFT. With RAST, this is essentially a big piece of infrastructure. which offers a lot of value in terms of the context that can also flow through with any transaction. Previously, IDFT का transaction करते थे, so you could only tag some little bits with it that it's coming from person A to person B. RAST, Instant Payment System infrastructure, allows you to give a much bigger context. And just imagine if all the banks connected to the RAST, which they are right now, if they start implementing in their UI the ability to capture maximum context, the amount of data it would create around what kind of transactions are taking place, and then that data can be leveraged to create use cases, financial products. It just opens up a different avenue. So that's how the system is essentially different. It's instant. The settlements between the banks take place instantly, and most importantly, it's free.
That's always important.
Yes.
You should have started with that.
So the cost has gone down. So yeah, I mean, that's the biggest difference we talk in terms of IBS.
So if you allow Zainab, I was just saying two more things about RAST. It's a central switch. So Pakistan is a net receiver of remittances, and a lot of our, we have a lot of economic dependence on remittances. So RAST as a platform would allow us to also integrate with international such switches, and would lower the cost of remittances, and would save also very precious foreign exchange that we now give maybe as commissions to the foreign countries.
What I'm also hearing is that, with RAST, you just don't have payments, and transactions. You also have different use cases that can come in. You're also talking about how you've increased the size of the pie. It's not just that the frequency is increased, but it's also that more people are now using digital payments. So again, going to the original idea of, what does Karandaaz do and why would Karandaaz invest in this? There is a very high level of financial exclusion in Pakistan. Whether you're talking about women, men, generally there's a rural, urban dimension to it also. So things like, a transaction switch can really help address that. And then, taking it even to an international use case, as you said. So, so that is pretty impressive.
So helping keep the money, in the digital system obviously helps us as a nation to reduce the problem of cash in circulation, which has far-reaching impacts as well.
Great, thanks so much. Shmaila, I'll come to you, and then I'll come to you last. So Shmaila, what is the one project or achievement that means the most to you that Karandaaz has done?
So it'll have to be women ventures for me. So we
Why are you
worked.
not surprised?
So the organization itself has worked a long time on this lending model for women. Like, we've been implementing it since 2017, and at this point, it's one of the largest private sector-led gender financing portfolio. It's a lot of work and effort has gone into it. The model has refined. We figured out what kind of pricing would work for these businesses, what kind of business development support we need to provide. We structured it, refined it, and also what kind of institutional formalization is important for these businesses to grow and to absorb this kind of money and achieve their growth aspirations. So the learning itself has been significant. We've come across phenomenal business women who are doing amazing work in Pakistan. Some of the businesses people would be very easily able to relate to because they're on the retail side. So if you know Nutrilove, if you're into healthy snacking, you would know you'll find them at every fuel station. Lel is producing stone inlay work and using that in furniture. They've hit international markets and they're doing exhibitions abroad. And it was with this money that they were able to create that space for themselves. Clayworks is another business that produces ceramics. Most restaurants would use their crockery. So it's a big portfolio. These are some of the businesses. We're also supporting Circle, which is a school for children that have learning disabilities. So it's a very mixed portfolio and very exciting work is being done. And a lot needs to be done to promote this kind of business development. Also, what we're excited about going forward is that not treating this as a homogeneous group. So women-led businesses are of all sizes, starting from micro all the way to the top, and all businesses would have different financing and business development needs. And what we're doing going forward is figuring out those needs and introducing new products to help those businesses grow.
That's actually, that's quite a range, so you're investing in many different kinds of businesses, and I think as great as that is it, or as great as it is, it also presents a challenge because, then you have to really be learning on the job. You really need to be seeing what kind of technical assistance you're providing, what kind of business. So that's a very compelling work. No wonder you're proud of it.
That's what's helped us grow because we had to learn alongside and keep on refining the model, and the organization had a lot of appetite to support this work. So at no point did we not get support from the board or from the senior management to reduce it or stop doing it because it is a very high risk segment. Not a lot of banks are lending to women-led businesses, and we are, and it's got its own issues, but we're figuring them out and we're addressing them. So it is, working with this segment is very possible and it's viable too. It just needs some dedication.
Great. With that, we'll move to you, Vikas. What do you think, in your opinion, is the project or the biggest achievement that you're most proud of?
अच्छा, मैं उसकी बात करने से पहले I would say that one vertical is missed, which is the research marketing vertical. And I can talk about one particular achievement of that vertical which I'm quite proud of. It's the digital banking regulations. बहुत सारे लोगों को नहीं पता होगा that this is an assistance which was actually provided by Karandaaz to the central bank on what should be how should framework look like, what would be the regulations, etc. And based on that, this entire space has now been opened up, that in which State Bank has given NOCs and for 5 licenses, and the pilot solutions are being tried, and soon you will see digital banks emerging in the country. Now that's a role which Karandaaz has played, or Karandaaz knowledge function has played. We are also supporting for a similar exercise, Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan too. So one thing is that I would mention. Now coming to the question that what I am proud of as CEO of Karandaaz, I would say that bit of history lesson, say. Lots of development programs that you see. Karandaaz was originally funded by Gates Foundation. It continues to be funded by Gates Foundation and UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. So बहुत सारे डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम जो आप पाकिस्तान में देखते हैं उसमें क्या होता रहा है? होता ये रहा है कि प्रोग्राम में पैसे आए, 5 साल 6 साल प्रोग्राम की लाइफ है, उसने एक कंसल्टेंसी को या एक पर्टिकुलर एक्टिविटी को सपोर्ट किया, 6 साल ख़त्म हुए और उसके बाद आप इंस्टीट्यूशनल मेमोरी भी खो देते हैं and then you move on. In some cases, I would say that there are consulting firms which exist or people which exist, and 3 years after that, obviously 5 years is too less a time to address a gap. Another funding comes and the same work is done and again repaid for that, and the gap still remains there. What Karandaaz has been able to do is to show that you can actually create sustainable vehicle with the same amount of money. And then that sustainable vehicle can act also as a plug and play platform which becomes a kind of a living organism itself. That it has all the institutional memory in which funding has gone, experience has gone. अब मैं example लूँगा. For example, आप ये देखें digital stack की बात हो रही है. When we started digital financial services, I can tell you, we were talking about Center for Digital Financial Inclusion. We were not talking about RAST even. And since we were building enough momentum, RAST came along. And when RAST came along, Shajil is sitting here, he would tell you, we were not thinking about Pakistan Digital Stack. But because one thing we've been able to do, we are building on this. Women Ventures, when we started, it was basically we thought we do it with grant, and we also assumed that all women-led businesses are credit-starved and you just give them and they'll start flourishing. And we realized there are challenges in that, and then how to perfect this model. And it's true for all verticals. So for me, the biggest achievement is that we were able to create a sustainable institution, and the system donors also realize. एक और बात मैं आपसे करना चाहूँगा कि British International Investment one of the oldest DFIs globally known. It's a private sector arm of the UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. उनकी नई publication Insight Note है on how they work with the SMEs. And in that they acknowledge that you have to create entities which can work deeper and locally with the SMEs. So Pakistan में such institutions were missing. So I would say that's a
big
demonstration, that's a big achievement. Second thing is that, third thing is that impact has been a theme of all the verticals. And we have been able to apply very rigorous methodologies. And it is something which is owned by sponsors, board, and the staff. And we remain at it whenever we make any investment grant or other.
Great. So, I mean, what we're really talking about, I was to sum up, all of what everybody has said, that the problem we all knew, there's a lot of gap, there's a lot of things that need to be done. But in that, being able to look at a problem and approach it from various angles, and then having the institutional knowledge and then having the ability to deliver in the longer run. So, unfortunately, what happens a lot of times with grants and grant-led programs is that they start and they finish and they are not able to make significant impact because just in terms of the life of the project. So what Karandaaz has provided is that it's really, taken the value for the grants that it had received originally and it's continuing to provide that. And I think the other thing that's very important that all of you were talking about is the learning curve that came on each thing, So the original plans or the original ideas, that were sort of put into practice, Karandaaz has the ability to augment them. Karandaaz has the ability to add on to them and, to keep into account what is happening outside, what is the need of the customer, what is the need of the public, and, see how you can actually optimize the programs that you're running under each of the verticals. So, when Karandaaz was made, I think the NBMFC license was not even there. Right? But to think and to be agile enough over the years to be like, okay, we now need to do research on, digital banks. And then, I know that currently there's a research that's going on open banking, So looking at, trying to see what is the need and really kind of continuously reinventing and continuously, upping the ante for your own self or as an institution of what there is that needs to be delivered. So that's pretty impressive. The achievements that you've talked about are really the ones that are going to push the needle on SME, push the needle on financial inclusion. So thank you for that. So we've talked about the achievements and we've talked about, the things that you have liked most about the work that, Karandaaz is doing. I think it's also very important to reflect on challenges. So I'm going to go around the table and I'm going to ask all of you, for the one big challenge that you've faced, as Karandaaz or, as an individual working in Karandaaz, and what has really been your way of kind of, addressing that challenge or what has been the lesson from that challenge? And I think we'll start with you, Shiji.
So look, again, there are a number of challenges and I'll start off by saying, हम क्योंकि impact create करना चाह रहे हैं, it's honestly speaking, it's not easy business. If I were to generate profits, I personally feel that would be an easier target. Creating impact is way more difficult, and that comes with its own challenges. Because digital financial services domain deals with the public and private sector, so I'll take the liberty of calling out at least one challenge from both sides. Starting with the public sector mein we need large-scale interventions and they're supposed to be very complex. And these are not mini projects. Again, example is RAST or the SECP Digital Transformation or the Pakistan Digital Stack Initiative that we have just commenced the journey on. With public sector, the biggest challenge is to basically find the champions of change. Because public sector, as we all know, there's constant movement. The political will is sometimes there, sometimes it's lacking. So to find the right anchor and to make sure that the intervention is actually institutionalized so that even if people move on, the intervention can continue. And third part to it is it can continue, it can finish with our grant, it can go through a few years with our support as well, but what next? So having a sustainable model in place, agreed with these public sector entities, that is one of the biggest challenges. Thankfully, alhamdulillah, we have been able to overcome it so far, but it takes a lot of effort. Coming towards private sector interventions mein, I would say सबसे बड़ा जो challenge हमें आता है वो ये है कि we are doing partnerships with commercial entities with a focus on the impact that we want to achieve. But the commercial entity has to,
Double.
Exactly, they have to increase their profits. They have to expand their business. So finding that right balance where we can chase our impact, but along the way, the entity also becomes more profitable, or if it's in the red, it can, graduate from red to green, or if their business model can be further enhanced. We have to find those partners where there is a proper alignment between the two things, impact and the commercial sense for the entity. So that is the biggest challenge on the private sector, and that takes a lot of effort, but once we get it right, the impact is there to be seen then.
Yeah, and I think I'll circle back to what Vikas was saying earlier in terms of institutional knowledge. So,
Yep.
the way that you evaluate companies or the way that you evaluate grant proposals, it's really been an evolution.
Yes.
From, the first kind of times that you guys did this.
Absolutely. We didn't get it right the first time, I would say. Yes, we have learned a lot, and we have tweaked the models, and I think in the future we'll be tweaking them further, because every day is a new challenge. Every partner comes with their own dynamics, so we have to find those the right balance, the right points of alignment. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Shmaila, I'll come to you. What is the challenge, and what have you kind of learned?
It would be continued economic uncertainty, because when you design a model or a product, it's around certain knowns and certain unknowns. And economic risks are mostly on the unknown side, but वो इतना unknown हमने नहीं सोचा था, और उसके इतने frequent cycles भी हमने नहीं सोचे थे. So the impact that we were supposed to achieve in 3 years, वो model बहुत shift हुआ है. And we will be seeing those results in another 2 years or so, because वो सारी restructuring होनी पड़ी है. So, but it has made us a lot more agile. When COVID happened, nobody was prepared for it. That was the first economic shock. And उस वक्त हमने उसको handle किया था, और उसके बाद economic downturn था, recession था, फिर उसके बाद political uncertainty, अभी economic uncertainty है. So we've become a lot more agile in responding to these issues. So थोड़े हम भी thick-skinned हो गए हैं. बट ये है कि जो आपने रिजल्ट्स अचीव करने होते हैं वो फिर डिलेड हो जाते हैं. जो हमने 3 सालों में मॉडल टेस्ट करके प्रूव कर देना था, was taking a lot longer.
Bilkul, I think that's extremely important. I mean, even when you're just looking at planning cycles now, I think the world has really shifted. When we were younger and we were studying park studies, we were like, पहला 5-year plan ये था, दूसरा 5-year plan ये था. 5-year planning तो, it just seems undoable. And, then we heard 3-year planning. And now we're down to what, an 18-month cycle with caveats for on-coursing throughout the 18 months, right? So yeah, I think it's made us more agile, and and it's made generally people more agile. And I think the agility that you talk about is very evident from the gains that your program has had. So yeah, that's an important challenge. But the idea is to not stop at the challenge, but to see how you can actually address that challenge through the work and continued work. Naveed, I'll come to you.
Zainab, I think what we need to look at is the overall environment and the landscape. We have about 23 billion rupees of capital that we have invested in various forms. The gap of SME financing is also quite transparent, and we spoke about it. So how does Karandaaz go in and address these challenges? We had 2 approaches. Go it ourselves and try and fund each SME or as many SMEs as possible. With limited amount of capital, the impact would not be there. So we found a way to act as a catalyst and multiplier impact by partnering with financial institutions and building their capacity as well for the new SME products. For example, for a couple of banks, we created supply chain finance departments for them, and they are now flourishing. But it was the pace. It was the pace of this conversion, pace of this change in how they view the SMEs and the SME risk that has been slow. I think a lot of institutional thinking at these financial institutions also needs to go in, supported by the State Bank, in which their whole perception and the assessment of risk towards SME changes. I think changes are coming, as they say, but it'll take some time for them to do that. And that's our frustration, which is at the institutional level. On the other side, as far as SMEs are concerned as well, we work directly with SMEs both on the equity and the credit side. So when we work with them, we provided them capacity building capital. We also helped them grow using our capacity to build their business plans and do a lot of things. But SMEs, being family-owned businesses generally, also have a little bit of inertia in converting from an institutional, from a family-owned business to an institutional, business that then has the ability to then attract other capital as well. So while we have a substantial amount of risk appetite, we've demonstrated to the market that the risk is not as high if you go into SMEs. We've experimented directly working with SMEs. Now, private capital, financial institutions, other private equity funds have to step in and take advantage of it. And we've seen that that is a bit slow. And we need those market players to step up and then learn from us and take a step forward in addressing this gap on their own.
Yeah, and I think this particular challenge is more exacerbated or, gets further exacerbated by the fact that all the banks want to do is put their money in treasury and, lend to the government, and it's so safe and it's making them money, so why challenge? Why risk it, So that, makes this challenge even worse. And then on the second challenge that you talk about, there's a yet to be published research that Karandaaz is funding right now on corporate governance practices, and we had focus group discussions with SME owners where we asked them, about a corporate governance principle. So when we asked them how important is it, 98% said very important. How hard is it to implement? It comes down. They're like, 50%, 40% say it's very hard to implement. And then how many of you are implementing it usually goes down to 9%, right? So corporate governance and, those things, I think the needle is moving, and, interventions like Karandaaz and, others where they're really investing in seeing, how they can have better governance in these SMEs to make them more attractive for not just Karandaaz, for banks to invest in also. But, it is a long, I think it is a long journey. So thank you for sharing that. We'll move on to you now, Kas, in terms of the challenge. What do you think has been the biggest challenge? What have been the lessons out of those challenges?
So Zainab, I would say Karandaaz का मेन काम है, आप अगर डेवलपमेंट चैलेंज आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं, सोल्यूशन स्ट्रक्चर करते हैं और फिर उसे सक्सेसफुली इम्प्लीमेंट करते हैं, all of that requires skill and knowledge base. You're bringing partners together. You should have convincing knowledge that you can go and talk to people, talk to sponsors to put their capital into it. So काबिल लोग ढूंढना is the biggest challenge. And सिर्फ काबिल लोग ढूंढना नहीं, they should be passionate about it as well. So aspiration and capability, both go hand in hand, and if they are passionate about it, so that's the major challenge. Attracting right people and then retaining them. And it's not just within Karandaaz. You heard Sharjeel that sometimes you're doing reform with your partners. Champions of change in those organizations is also extremely important. It is their challenge, those organizations' challenge, but if they are working with us, it becomes our challenge as well too. What have we learned? Yeah, मेरी strategy क्या है? I can talk about that. So I try that none of them gets bored and none of them gets free enough time to think anything else. So keep them busy, give them enough to think about and enough to structure. And that's how you address it.
We'll do another version of Round the Table with just the people who get this extra work and how they feel about it, but that's not for discussion right now. Thanks, Vikas, for sharing that. So I think, the right people who are aligned on the mission and are also then aligned in terms of the expertise that they're bringing to the table. That is a challenge that most institutions face, but when you're trying to address an issue that's so big, I think it becomes extremely important. So thanks for sharing that, Vikas. We're going to move on to the last part of this discussion, and this is the question really is, what is it in the future that Karandaaz is doing that you are most excited about? And then maybe we'll start with you this time.
I think what's exciting going forward for me is that I'm managing two very interesting portfolios. So Women Ventures, we're going to be expanding it. We're also going to be looking at the employment side of it. So those are interesting areas, very different from what we're currently doing, but addressing the same issue from a different direction. And then climate change is such a big issue, and we're developing local capability to come up with solutions to address this problem, and that creates local innovation and interest in this problem and becoming part of it in solving that problem. So that's what excites me going forward.
What about you, Sharjeel?
So I'll drop in a few terms here which I'm really passionate about and really excited about. So first of all, Pakistan Digital Stack. Really excited to move towards becoming a digital nation, which would be based on an open, trusted, and connected digital public infrastructure. So we have laid the foundation in form of Rust, and I think the next layers are just around the corner, and the situation is right for that.
And sorry, so for those of us who are not as advanced on this, what does that mean? What would it
Sure. So the next two layers, as we call them, in the digital stack, we are going after the digital identity as well as a data exchange for public and private sector, which would basically enable on-demand, cashless, paperless, seamless services for all the citizens of this country. And when I say citizens, I'm talking about individuals as well as the businesses. So getting to that state, rolling out the Pakistan Digital Stack in the next couple of years, inshallah, I think that is the most exciting thing for us and the biggest challenge perhaps as well. So we are geared up for that and we're really excited about that.
extremely aspirational?
Yes.
And, if it can happen, then
That's what Karandaaz is about. A few years back, when we started talking about the instant payment system, we got similar looks and similar comments, but we made it happen. So I think, God willing, we'll also make this happen.
God willing, Karandaaz willing, Shajil willing, everybody willing.
Everybody willing.
Everybody working together on this. And that's great. And I know we just had an event on the
Yes.
Pakistan Digital Stack also. And just the number of people who wanted to be invited to it since,
Yes.
my department was dealing with it. So there's a lot of public
We'll put a
interest.
ticket on that.
Yeah,
Next
I
time.
mean, next time we will. So, so it's just like there's a lot of interest in this, and
Yes.
a lot of people have a lot of knowledge and insight on what a digital stack should look like and what it would look like. And what was also very heartening at that event was that you had a lot of public sector engagement, right?
Yep,
Because
yep.
what
Absolutely
you were mentioning
essential.
earlier, so that's very, very important, because you can put a product out there, you can fund it, but for it to remain within the
Yep.
public sector, you need, all of these institutions to come in and play their role.
Yep.
So very, very exciting. As a member of Karandaaz and also as a citizen, I think it's something that, is really, really
Yep.
exciting. Naveed, we'll move to you.
Look, I think it's a very exciting time. There's so many exciting work streams within Karandaaz. There's a lot of synergy between them. Just focusing on one, for example, what the digital financial services Sharjil's team is doing, the amount of work in creating or developing the digital financial landscape, giving grants to fintechs that have now come of age from a very startup phase to those that are making a difference. Using those channels and matching them with brick and mortar financial institutions to improve the quality of service and reduce the time for processing of transactions is very important. So to give you an example, supply chain finance typically takes about a week for an SME to take financing in a very structured supply chain finance transaction. But with a fintech that is processing the payments and is hooked up to the anchor and the SME via the distributor directly, brings transparency to that transaction, and if the bank is brought into the equation, the actual transaction time can reduce to minutes, if not less. And there are experiments like that going on. There are a couple of banks that have adopted these particular fintechs, and their actual transaction time is in minutes instead of 7 days. Now, if you just look at the opportunity that is there because of this, the amount of SMEs that can be touched in terms of reducing and increasing their access to finance is incredible. And we think that using the relationships or the experience of our digital team, matching with our experience and the reach into the financial institutions, helping them set up these particular transactions and products is going to be a very, very big contribution. And on their own as well, they're going to really substantially increase the access to finance for the SMEs, at least in one stage. And then step by step, we see a transformation of the financial landscape as it becomes more prevalent. Digital banks being another area which will eventually come of age, and that is going to happen. So that's what we are excited about and looking forward to working with banks on this.
Yeah, great. So I think one of the important things, and maybe we can have another podcast on this, is just why is there an SME finance gap? And I think the information asymmetry is a really, really important part of it. So if we can address that through the fintechs, or we can address that through other multiple players in the middle, not only does it reduce transaction, the time the time that it takes to make the transaction, but it also increases the likelihood of banks investing in that, and that is a very, very interesting prospect. So, Vikas, over to you. I mean, what do you feel is the thing that you're looking most forward to that Karandaaz is going to be working on or doing?
अच्छा देखें, मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक कॉन्टेक्स्ट चेंज हो रहा है, करेंसी पाकिस्तान की डिवैल्यू हुई है, एक गैप क्रिएट हुआ है. गैप ये क्रिएट हुआ है कि बहुत सारी ऐसी प्रोडक्ट और सर्विसेज विच वर बीइंग अर्लियर इम्पोर्टेड, import substitution is possible, or investing in firm competitiveness is possible now. I think that's an exciting opportunity. Many firms have already started working on that. So some of our investees, for example, I think Wadat is looking at exports, NRSP, APC is looking at exports. In the women ventures, Nutrilove is looking at exports. They're also looking at import substitution. LEL is also looking at that. So I'm quite excited about our firms, that investee firms, and also of finding opportunities which would be really contributed to the local economy, in the sense that they would be able to cut on the imports or provide substitutes, and also find export markets abroad.
Great. So, I mean, I think what you're really talking about is how, we're at a, the context that we're now operating in because of, the currency issue. There is more opportunity for SMEs to develop and to create products that are matching the products that were being imported. And because we have the vehicles available, whether it's through Women Ventures, whether it's through Karandaaz Capital, whether it's through the support that we do for fintechs, through DFS, the conditions are right, and these conditions can really be taken advantage of.
And that's one in a decade's opportunity.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's a disruption which has happened and very quickly. So it's an opportunity which is available.
Yeah, and I think one of those disruptions earlier, for example, was when COVID happened and digital became so much more relevant and so much more important. And while we don't want another COVID, but what it brought with it was, in terms of
build on its momentum that
exactly.
it created.
Thank you, Naveed, Shajil, Vikas, Shumaila, for being on this. This is the first podcast that we're doing for Round the Table at KRN. This is something that we want to institutionalize. We want to have more discussions, more talks on pertinent issues, to why we're doing the work that we're doing, what are the, what are the issues that are being faced, what are the solutions, what are the interventions. So everybody, if you like the content that we've produced, please like and share. Put in comments what you'd like us to talk about later. I think just a discussion on RAS itself, what it can do, what it can present, what are the what are the possibilities in terms of the integrations, how does that work with the digital stack, maybe just the work that you're doing with the with not just the investees, but the subsidiaries, if we could have those subsidiaries on board, talk about, what are the challenges they're facing, because your expertise in creating, these living organisms, as you like to call them, in terms of special purpose vehicles, how can we do one for climate, how should we go about doing it, what are the things that are to be kept in mind. And then Shumaila, of course, we'd love to hear more from your investees. We'd love to hear more about how the direction is going in terms of, the optimizations that you're doing on products. So guys, if you have any suggestions, please put them in the comments. Like I said, this is our first round the table at KRN, and we would like to come back with more round the tables at Karandaaz. Thank you, everyone.